Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and One Night. Now, when it was the 681st night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Abdullah ibn Mamar al-Kaisi thus continued. So I sprang up and made for the quarter whence the sound came. Nor had the voice ended repeating the verses, ere I was with the speaker and saw a youth on whose side face the hair had not sprouted, and in whose cheeks tears had worn twin trenches. Quoth I to him, Fair befall thee for a youth. And quoth he, And thee also. Who art thou? And I replied, Abdullah bin Mamar al-Kasay. And he said, Dost thou want aught? I rejoined, I was sitting in the garden, and naught hath troubled me this night but thy voice. With my life would I ransom thee. What aileth thee? He said, Sit thee down. So I sat down and continued, I am Otbah bin Al-Habib bin Al-Mindur bin Al-Jamul the Ansari. I went out in the morning to the mosque Al-Hajjaj, and occupied myself there a while with prayer bows and prostrations, after which I withdrew apart to worship privily. But lo, up came women as they were moons, walking with a swaying gait, and surrounding a damsel of passing loveliness, perfect in beauty and grace, who stopped before me and said, O Otbah, what sayest thou of union with one of who seeketh union with thee? Then she left me and went away, and since that time I've had no tidings of her, nor came up anyone of any trace of her. And behold, I am distracted, and do not but remove from place to place. Then he cried out, and fell to the ground fainting. When he came to himself, it was as if the damask of his cheeks were dyed with safflower, and he recited these couplets. I see you with my heart from far country. Would heaven you also me from far could see. My heart and eyes for you are sorrowing. My soul with you abides, and you with me. I take no joy in life when you are unseen, or heaven or garden of eternity. Said I, O Otbah, O son of my uncle, repent to thy Lord, and crave pardon for thy sin, for before thee is the terror of standing up to judgment. He replied, Far be it for me to do so. I shall never leave to love till the two mimosa gatherers return. I abode with him till daybreak, when I said to him, Come, let us go to the mosque Al-Hajjaj. So we went thither, and sat there till we had prayed the midday prayers, when lo, up came the women, but the damsel was not among them. Quoth they to him, O Abba, what thinkest thou of her who seeketh union with thee? And he said, And what of her? And they replied, Her father hath taken her, and departed to Al-Samawa. I asked them the name of the damsel, and they said, She is called Rayya, daughter of Al-Gitfa al-Sumani. Whereupon Otbah raised his head and recited these verses. My friends, Rayya hath mounted soon as morning shone. To Samwa's wilds her caravan is gone. My friends, I've wept till I can weep no more. Oh, say, hath any one a tear that I can take on loan? Then I said to him, O Otbah, I have brought with me great wealth, wherewith I desire to succor generous men, and by Allah I will lavish it upon thee, so that thou mayest attain thy desire, and more than thy desire. Come with me to the assembly of Ansaris. So we rose, and we went till we entered their assembly, where I salaamed to them, and they returned my greeting civilly. Then quoth I, O assembly, what say ye of Otbah and his father? And they replied, They are of the princes of Arabs. I continued, Know that he is smitten with the calamity of love, and I desire your furtherance to Al-Samwa. And they said, To hear is to obey. So they mounted with us the whole party, and we rode till we drew near the place of Banu Salim. Now, when Gitfrith heard of our being near, he hastened forth to meet us, saying, Long life to you, O nobles. Whereto we replied, And to thee also. Behold, we are thy guests. Quoth he, Ye have lighted down at a most hospitable abode and ample. And alighting he cried and said, Ho, all ye slaves, come down. So they came down and spread skin rugs and cushions and slaughtered sheep and cattle. But we said, We will not taste of thy food till thou have accomplished our needs. He asked, "And what is your need?" And he answered, "We demand thy noble daughter in marriage for Otbah bin Hubab bin Mundur, the illustrious and well-born." "O my brethren," said he, "she whom you demand is owner of herself, and I will go into her and tell her." So he rose in wrath and went into Rayya and said to him, "O my papa, why do I see thee show anger?" And he replied, saying, "Certain of Ansaris have come upon me to demand thy hand of me in marriage." Quoth she, "They are noble chiefs. The prophets, on whom be the choicest blessings and peace, intercedeth for them with Allah. For whom among them do they ask me?" Quoth he, "For a youth known as Otbah bin Al-Hajjaj." And she said, "I have heard of Otbah, that he performeth what he promiseth, and findeth what he seeketh." Githrith cried, "I swear that I will never marry thee to him." "No, never, for there hath been reported to me somewhat of thy converse with him," said she. "And what was that? But in any case, I swear that the Ansaris shall not be uncivilly rejected. Wherefore do thou offer them a fair excuse." "How so?" "Make the dowry heavy to them, and they will desist." "Then sayest well," said he, and going out in haste, told the Ansaris, "The damsel of the tribe consenteth, but she requireth a dowry worth herself." "Who engageth for this?" I answered, "I." Then said I require for her 1,000 bracelets of red gold, and 5,000 dirhams of the coinage of Hajar, and 100 pieces of woolen cloth, and stripped stuffs at all Yaman, and 5 bladders of ambergris. Said I, "Thou shalt have that much. Dost thou consent?" And he said, "I do consent." So I dispatched all Medina, the illumined, a party of the Ansaris, who brought all for which I had become surety. Whereupon they slaughtered sheep and cattle, and the folk assembled to eat of the food. We abode thus 40 days, when Githrith said to us, "Take your bride." So we sat her in the dromedary litter, and her father equipped her with the 30 camel loads of things of price. After which we farewelled him, and journeyed till we came upon a day's journey of all Medina, the illumined, where we fell upon his horsemen with intent to plunder, and methinks they were the Banu Salum. Otbah drove at them, and slew of them much people, but fell back wounded by a lance thrust, and presently dropped to the earth. Then there came to us succor of the country people, who drove away the highwaymen, but Otbah's days were ended. So we said, "Alas for Otbah, oh!" And the damsel, hearing it, cast herself down from the camel, and throwing herself upon him, cried out grievously, and repeated these couplets: "Patient I seem, yet patience shown by me was but self-guiling till thy sight I see. Had my soul done as do my life had gone, had fled before mankind forestalling thee, then after me and thee none shall be friend, be just, nor any soul with soul agree." Then she sobbed a single sob, and gave up the ghost. We dug one grave for them, and laid them in the earth, and I returned to the dwellings of my people, where I abode 7 years. Then I took me again to Al-Hajjaj, and entered the Al-Madinah, the illumined, for pious visitation, said in my mind, "By Allah, I will go again to Otbah's tomb." So I repaired thither, and behold, over the grave was a tall tree, on which hung fillets of red and green and yellow stuffs. So I asked the people of the place, "How be this tree called?" And they answered, "The tree is called the bride and the bridegroom." I abode by the tomb a day and a night, then went on my way. And this is all I know of Otbah. Almighty Allah have mercy upon them. And they also tell this tale of Hind, daughter of Nu'man and Al-Hajjaj. It was related that Hind, daughter of Nu'man, was the fairest woman of her day, and her beauty and loveliness was reported to Al-Hajjaj, who sought her in marriage and lavished much treasure on her. So he took her to wife, engaging to give her a dowry of 200,000 dirhams in case of divorce. When he went into her, he abode with her a long time. One day, after this, he went into her, and found her looking at her face in the mirror, and saying, "Hind is an Arab's vile, filly, purest bred, which hath been covered by a mongrel mule, and colt of horse she threw by Allah. Well, if mule it, but results from mulish rule." When Al-Hajjaj heard this, he turned back and went his way, unseen of Hind, and being minded to put her away, he sent Abdullah bin Tahir to her to divorce her. So Abdullah went in to her and said to her, Al-Hajjaj Abu Muhammad saith to thee, Here be the 200,000 dirhams of thy contingent dowry he oweth thee, and he hath deputed me to divorce thee. Replied she, O Ibn Tahir, I gladly agree to this, for know that I never for one day took pleasure in him. So if we separate by Allah, I shall never regret him. And these 200,000 dirhams I give to thee as a reward for the glad tidings, and bring me to my release from yonder dog of the Thaqafites. After this, the commander of the faithful, Abd al-Malik bin Marwan, heard of her beauty and the loveliness, her stature and symmetry, her sweet speech and the amorous grace of her glances, and sent to her to ask her of marriage. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 682nd night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the prince of the true believers, Abd al-Malik bin Marwan, hearing of the lady's beauty and loveliness, sent to ask her in marriage, and she wrote in reply a letter, in which, after the glorification of Allah and benediction of his prophet, she said, But afterwards, know, O commander of the faithful, that the dog hath lapped in the vase. When the caliph read her answer, he laughed, and he wrote her, citing his saying, Whom may Allah bless and keep? If a dog lap in the vessel of one of you, let him wash 7 times, once thereof with earth, and adding, Wash the affront from the place of use. With this she could not gainsay him. So she replied back to him, saying, after praise and blessing, O commander of the faithful, I will not consent save on one condition, and if thou ask me what it is, I reply that Al-Hajjaj lead my camel to the town where thou tarriest barefoot and clad as he is. When the caliph read the letter, he laughed long and loudly, and sent to Al-Hajjaj, bidding him to do as she wished. He dared not disobey the order, so he submitted to the caliph's commandment, and sent to Hind, telling her to make ready for the journey. So she made ready and mounted her litter, when Al-Hajjaj with his suite came up to the Hind's door, and as she mounted and her damsels and eunuchs rode around her, he dismounted and took the halter of her camel and led it along, barefooted, whilst she and her damsel and tireswoman laughed and jeered at him and mocked at him. Then she said to her tirewomen, Draw back the curtain of the litter. And they drew back the curtain till Hind was face to face with Al-Hajjaj, whereupon she laughed at him, and he improvised this couplet. Though now thou jeer, O Hind, how many a night I've left thee wakeful, sighing for the light. And she answered him with these 2. We reck not, and our life escaped from bane, for waste of wealth and gear that went in vain. Money may be regained, and rank re-won, when one is cured of malady and pain. And she ceased not to laugh at him and make sport of him, till they drew near the city of the caliph, when she threw down a dinar with her own hand, and said to Al-Hajjaj, O camel driver, I have dropped a dirham. Look for it and give it to me. So he looked, and seeing naught but the dinar, said, This is a dinar. She replied, Nay, 'tis a dirham. But he said, This is a dinar. Then quoth she, Praise be Allah, who hath given us in exchange for a paltry dirham a dinar. Give it us. And Al-Hajjaj was abashed at this. Then he carried her to the palace of the commander of the faithful, and she went into him and became his favorite. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. She pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the men also tell a tale anent. Kuzaman bin Bashir and Ikramah al-Faziz. There lived once in the days of the caliph of Suleiman bin Abd al-Malik, a man of the Banu Asad, by the name of Kuzaman bin Bashir, who was famed for bounty and abundant wealth and excellence and righteous dealings with his brethren. He continued thus till times grew strait with him, and he became in need of the aid of those Moslem brethren on whom he had lavished favor and kindness. So they succored him for a while, and then grew weary of him, which when he saw, he went in to his wife, who was the daughter of his father's brother, and said to her, O my cousin, I find a change in my brethren, wherefore I am resolved to keep my house till death come to me. So he shut his door, and abode in his home, living on that which he had by him, till it was spent, and he knew not what to do. Now Ikrimah al-Rabai, surnamed Al-Fazaz, governor of Mesopotamia, had known him, and one day he sat in his audience chamber. Mentioned was the name of Kuzimah, whereupon quoth Ikrimah, How is it with him? And quoth they, He's in a plight past telling, and hath shut his door, and keepeth the house. Ikrimah rejoined, This cometh because of excess of generosity. But how is it that Kuzimah bin Bashir findeth nor comforter nor requiter? And they replied, He hath found naught of this. So when it was night, Ikrimah took 4,000 dinars and laid them in one purse. Then bidding saddle his beast, he mounted, and he rode privily to Kuzimah's house, attended only by one of his pages, carrying the money. When he came to the door, he alighted, and taking the purse from the page, made him withdraw far off, after which he went to the door, and he knocked. Kuzimah came out to him, and he gave him the purse, saying, Better thy case herewith. He took it, and finding it heavy, put it from his hand, and laying hold of the bridle of Ikrimah's horse, asked, Who art thou? My soul be thy ransom. Answered Ikrimah, O man, I came not to thee at time like this, desiring that thou shouldest know me. Kuzimah rejoined, I will not let thee go till thou hast made thyself known to me. Whereupon Ikrimah said, I am hight Jabir Athrat al-Kiram. Quoth Kuzimah, Tell me more. But Ikrimah cried, No, and fared forth, while Kuzimah went in to his cousin, and said to her, Rejoice, for Allah hath sent us speedy relief and wealth. If these be but dirhams, yet they are many. Arise and light the lantern. She said, I have not wherewithal to light it. So he spent the night handling the coins, and felt the roughness that they were dinars, but could not credit it. Meanwhile, Ikrimah returned to his own house, and found that his wife had missed him, and asked for him. And when they told her that he went riding forth, she misdoubted of him, and said to him, Verily, the Wali of Al-Jazra rideth not abroad after such an hour of the night, unattended and secretly, save to a wife or a mistress. He answered, Allah knoweth that I went not forth to either of these. Tell me, when wherefore thou wentest? I went not forth at this hour, save that none should know it. I must needs be told. Wilt thou keep the matter secret if I tell thee? Yes. So he told her the state of the case, adding, Wilt thou have me swear to thee? Answered she, No, no, my heart is set at ease, and trusteth in me that which thou hast told me. As for Kuzimah, soon as it was day, he made his peace with his creditors, and set his affairs in order. After which he got him ready, and set out for the court of Suleiman bin Abd al-Malik, who was then sojourning in Palestine. When he came to the royal gate, he sought admission of the chamberlain, who went in and told the caliph of his presence. Now he was renowned for his beneficence, and Suleiman knew of him, so he bade admit him. When he entered, he saluted the caliph after the usual fashion of saluting, and the king asked, O Kuzimah, what hath kept thee so long from us? Answered he, Evil case. And quoth the caliph, What hindered thee from having recourse to us? Quoth he, My infirmity, O commander of the faithful. And why? Said Suleiman. Comest thou to us now? Kuzimah replied, Know, O commander of the faithful, that I was sitting one night late in my house, when a man knocked at the door, and did thus and thus. And he went on to tell him all that had passed between him and Ikrimah, and himself from first to last. Suleiman asked, Knowest thou the man? And Kuzimah answered, No, O commander of the faithful. And he was reserved, and would not say, I am hit Jabir Athrat al-Kiram. When Suleiman heard this, his heart burned within him for anxiety to discover the man, and he said, If we know him truly, we would requite him for his generosity. Then he banned for Kuzimah a banner, and made him governor of Mesopotamia in the stead of Ikrimah al-Fahaz. And he set out for Al-Jazizah, where he turned and drew to the city. Ikrimah and the people of the place came forth to meet him, and they saluted each one and went into the town of Kuzamah, taking up his lodging in the government house, and bade take security for Ikrimah that he should be called to account. So an account was taken against him, and he was found to be in default for much money, whereupon Kuzamah required of him payment, but he said, I have no means of paying aught. Quoth Kuzamah, It must be paid. And quoth Ikrimah, I have it not. Do what thou hast to do. So Kuzamah ordered him to the gaol. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease the telling of my tale for today, till it be morrow.